Welcome to the Snowmass Town Council Chambers. We are here for an E.O.T.C. meeting. It's May 26th, and we will do roll call. Patty, do you want to do roll call?
Oh, we don't do roll call, but maybe we should start do this. I'm going to do roll call for the Board of County Commissioners. Kelly, are you here?
I'm on Teams, but here virtually. Nice to see everyone I can see.
Okay, Greg, can you hear and see us?
Here, I hear and I see.
And I have Steve here with me in the room, and myself, Patty Clapper, and Francie is out of town. Those darn Zoom meetings.
All right, John, and you are here, so why don't you do roll call for Aspen?
John Doyle from Aspen City Council. I see Rachel is here. Ward is here. I am here, and I've heard Skippy is en route.
En route. And Snowmass Village, Bill Madsen, Alyssa Shank.
Here.
Here, and Tom Fritzstein. All right. First item on the agenda is the approval of the March 24th action minutes. I have an approval for the minutes.
Would you like a motion, sir?
Motion to approve the minutes, thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 24th meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. Now we'll move on to public comment for non-agenda items. Anybody in the room have a public comment? Anybody online with a public comment?
Second, I'll just put it out there. I guess we'll give it 10 seconds for anybody to reply.
Okay. Not seeing any public comments, we'll move on to EoTC committee member updates, and I think we'll get an update from the roundabout from Brian Pettit.
Does green mean on? I would hope.
Green means go.
Thank you. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director for Picken County, and thank you for noticing the Brush Creek Road. That project went off without a hitch. We had some weather delays late, that late storm, but it does ride well and looks great. So thank you for your patience and everybody in Snowmass. But with regard to the roundabout, it's more good news. Basically, they are on time and on budget to complete the roundabout by June 30th. Wow. So we expect that to be done. Next week, people will experience a lane shift as the detours that go around the roundabout will be eliminated, and people will be driving on fresh concrete, about 10 inches of concrete throughout the roundabout. So it's progressing. Additionally, next week, you're going to see guardrail going in, and a project that's part of the, I guess, ABC to Aspen project is to resurface Maroon Creek Bridge, and people I don't think they realize this is part of the project. Starting next week, you're going to see rotomilling occurring on the now aging Maroon Creek Bridge. I about said new, but then that would be aging myself. But and that's to put a new surface on the bridge. So they'll be grinding off a lane at a time of the bridge, working across the bridge. Then they will use a diamond grinder to get down to the bridge surface. They'll put a layer of impenetrable membrane, a membrane that doesn't allow water to penetrate, and then they'll pave it with asphalt. That's going to be an 8-week project. So it starts next week and will probably go through August. The reason that's going to go through August is CDOT will not be impacting traffic from the 15th to the 20th of June to not to bother with food and wine. And then also that 4th of July weekend and the week before, CDOT's not going to try to impact traffic during that time as well. So CDOT's been incredibly cooperative and helpful and responsive to the needs of the community. So that's the update with the roundabout.
All right, lots of action going on in addition to a new bus stop going in.
That's correct.
Can I just ask, are they also going to be repaving 82?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's correct.
And when does that occur? After August?
It's about that same time, so I don't have that exact timing for this update, but it will be done before the fall. And then they'll be working on the Castle Creek Bridge expansion joints in September. All of that's part of the larger project from the ABC into town.
Thank
Great.
you.
Bill? Brian, do you have any sense of how many people are riding the RAFTA bus? How many people are going on McLean Flats detour? How many of them are going down the power plant to avoid the Cemetery Lane light and all those sorts of parameters? My observation is that there aren't that many more people, if any more, riding RAFTA than would normally. And there seem to be parking places in Brush Creek Park and Ride, and I thought that would be full because everybody'd want to park there and ride the bus.
I don't have bus ridership numbers right now. I can get them. We have seen more and more traffic using McLean Flats as an alternative to staying on 82. So that detour is working well, just distributing the traffic load between the two ways into town. But I don't have the bus numbers, Steve.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Brian, did they always have a flagman at Smith Hill? I came through the other morning and it was great,
Yes. Yep,
for public safety and just for traffic flow.
correct. And so that down valley lane's kind of brought down to one lane, and then we have a flagger there just to flush traffic off of the up valley 82 traffic.
So they go down Smith Hill and then up to McLean Flats, because
Correct.
that's where all trucks are going?
All cars, trucks have to stay on the highway.
Trucks stay on the highway, other way around. Okay, thank you.
And are we using our display, to direct traffic, or is that a CDOT display only?
There's a few different displays there. The displays that are directing traffic are CDOT displays. The variable message sign that was funded by the EoTC is directing people to take the bus at Brush Creek Park and Ride every morning.
Okay, great. Any other member updates? Anybody online with an update?
Member question, member comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Mattson. I see it's not on the agenda, and I guess for some reason I thought we were going to hear back from Mr. Bendon regarding the proposed development adjacent to the Park and Ride. Is there any status update on that? It's certainly news of it is swirling in the community, and I just wanted to find out, when do they plan to come back?
So I have not heard anything from them since the last meeting. So they received the standards that were approved by the EoTC, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. When I hear back from them on what their plan is, then they'll be scheduled on the next available meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys. Product testing some of that traffic we talk so much about.
All right. Great. Any other comments? All right, next item on the agenda is a public hearing of Brush Creek Park and Ride to ABC Aspen Trail Connection. David, take it away.
All right, let me get my presentation up here.
Hey, Skippy.
I guess before we get into the action items, I do want to review, as we do, the EoTC vision, mission statement, and state statute and voter requirements, just to refresh everybody before we get into the action items. So the EoTC does have a vision statement that states that we envision the Roaring Fork Valley as the embodiment of a sustainable transportation system that emphasizes mass transit mobility that contributes to the happiness and well-being of residents and visitors. We also have a mission statement that states that we will work collectively to reduce and manage the volume of vehicles on the road and parking system, and continue to develop and support a comprehensive multimodal long-range strategy that will ensure a convenient, equitable, and efficient transportation system for the Roaring Fork Valley. We are also bound by certain state statutes and voter requirements, specifically that the EoTC funds must be utilized for financing, operating, managing, and maintaining the mass transportation system within the Roaring Fork Valley. So thanks for bearing with me on that. As Mayor Madsen noted, the first action item here this afternoon is the Brush Creek Park and Ride to AABC Trail. As a little bit of background and just refresher on this project, this is a partnership project that is currently funded 1/3 by Pickens County Open Space and Trails, which is also lead on the project, as well as 1/3 by the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space and 1/3 by the EoTC. And this funding structure is just what's in place now. It's not anticipated to carry through in this fashion necessarily through construction. The review team to date has consisted of staff from the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Department, City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Department, and the Snowmass Parks and Recreation Department, as well as myself as the Transportation Administrator. This has resulted in a feasibility study that SGM put together in 2021 and completed in 2022 with the purpose of identifying the technically feasible hard surface ADA accessible trail connections between the Brush Creek Park and Ride and the AABC. And as you probably all recall, SGM provided a detailed presentation on those technically feasible options at the March 24th meeting. So we're not planning on getting into those details again, but within your packet you did have the complete study that was put together by SGM. And then the direction that we received at the March 24th meeting was a request for an outline on the proposed public process, as well as the additional information that we're looking to obtain through that process. And then the outcome that we're looking for today is administrative direction to initiate the public process, as well as begin the additional data gathering phase. I do want to remind everybody that this project is consistent with the 2020 EoTC Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan, or CVTP, and it does promote several of the regional priorities, including the park and ride lot improvements, first and last mile solutions, and transit accessibility enhancements, and a couple of the Upper Valley priorities, including bicycle and pedestrian connections to transit stops, and specifically the Brush Creek Park and Ride, as well as the airport and AABC multimodal transit hub and transit circulation enhancements. This item was also reviewed by the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Board and the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Board on February 24th. So this was about a month before your previous meeting. And just as a reminder of what came out of that meeting, those two boards did recommend moving forward with the public process in 2022 with the two identified technically feasible alignment options. They did identify a general preference for option one, which was titled the twin bridges option. They also identified certain areas where we needed to look for more information, and specifically, they wanted more information on the bicycle commute times to Aspen and not just the AABC, as well as a commuter study to determine how many cars could be taken off the road, and the feasibility of this connection as a winter commute route. I think there's still some concern as to it would. I think we can all agree that it would function as a summer commute route, but its feasibility as a winter commute route, I think, is still up for debate. And then identifying whether the 10-foot trail width is enough to provide enough capacity for both recreational riders and commuters at the same time from the park and ride itself. They also asked us to look at phasing overall and develop a list of potential issues should the project be phased. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Gary Tenenbaum, Director of Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and Austin Weiss with the Director of the City of Aspen Parks and Recreation Department to review the project schedule that we have moving forward and what we're looking at in terms of the public process and the additional information that we're looking to receive.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gary.
And so, it's nice to be in person. Sorry, last time. Oh, yeah, Mike. So, yeah, it's good to be in person and be able to kind of connect again on this trail project, because this is a pretty large project overall. And I know that's one of the big concerns that a lot of people had at the beginning was, you know, when you see a dollar value of that magnitude, you're always just like, I was on your side as an elected official, and you just go, okay, well, what are the other options that we potentially have? And so, you know, what we're trying to do is just to really,
We lost
We lost sound.
audio on Teams.
Sorry, hold
Anyone
on
on
one
Teams hear
second.
me?
I can hear you, but I can't hear
We can't hear the room.
Snowmass Village.
and
I
don't
just-
think
I can
any of us.
can you hear me?
I just texted Clint.
The Zoom stopped.
We did not stop. Can you hear us now?
Quality was pretty bad also. It was kind of scratchy, I think, from that live mic. I'm not sure if it's a system problem on your, in the council output.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was really scratchy. So hopefully, if they
Can you hear
it'll
us
be better.
now?
I just told them we still can't hear.
Sorry, folks.
I'm
Can
waiting.
you guys hear us?
We
Melissa,
can hear you.
What'd you say?
thank you.
You're welcome.
No, how are you?
They can hear us, but we can't hear them.
Oh, okay.
Aha, we can take over this meeting.
They can hear each
Okay,
other,
on
they
to
just
agenda
can't
item.
Hear
number
you.
3.
Hold on.
Let's just have three
Transporter
different
pod.
meetings and see
And
how
I
it
think
goes.
I just, sorry,
Do we need to all call back in or something and
I'm
start
finding out.
again, or
They all
does the
approved it, we're good.
speaker need to just call back in?
I'm finding out.
I think that's what you're gonna find.
That's what I heard.
Thanks for taking charge, Alyssa. I admire that in you. You're just launching there.
He's asked them to wait 1 second, he said.
We might have something on here. Hold on. We're going to try one thing.
Doug is working on it. Just
You're
one
still
second.
not hearing us, right, Alyssa?
We can talk about Greg again.
It'll go magically on as you say it.
I know, so I open my mouth and Greg will be, I can hear you.
No, maybe this might work. Who knows?
We can hear Doug.
Greg, did you get your e-bike?
Can you hear me now?
It arrived finally a week late. And the package was kind of damaged, but the bike looks
Somebody today who said, we've been doing
What'd you get?
Cannondale from REI, and it was available.
Can you guys in the world out there hear us now?
When did the strobe lights go on?
No.
It does not appear so.
I'm leaving. I'm rejoining the meeting. Sorry, folks.
He's gonna throw them all off and we're gonna carry on.
Nothing right.
We have two from each jurisdiction, doesn't that count?
What?
We have two people from each jurisdiction here in the room, doesn't that count?
Can we hear a test in the outside world? Can you hear us?
We can hear
Yeah.
you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you did, but it was magic.
All right, sounds like we're back in
I
business.
think I caused the whole thing. I pushed my laptop against it.
So you can hear me? Can you guys hear me online?
All right, we're back
All
in
right,
business.
we're back. I have no idea where I stopped. So I'll just go into kind of what the public process would look like, because that's really what you guys wanted to see going forward. And so, you know, this is a typical public process outline that we do for every project that we do with Pickens County Open Space and Trails. And so obviously the blue is where we're at right now. And so we are at that point now where, you know, do we go into the next phase of public process, which, as you can see, there's some significant additional information. One of the things that you guys did ask for was an updated cost to just pave the Rio Grande Trail from where it's paved today into Stein Park to where it's paved through it, just so it's another option that the public can look at and try to give us feedback on. So it could do with the phasing of which bridges, or do we do bridges, and so that's happening. We're getting that update. Just because even if you guys don't want to move forward with this today, we need that information because it's good for us to know that as we go to the future. Because one of the questions that we always ask in the Pickens County Citizen Survey is we've been asking about this one, but we also ask about paving into Aspen. This project has been getting a very favorable, response from Pickens County residents all over, including Snowmass and the city of Aspen. The paving is always about 50-50. And so, there's a lot of people who would like to keep it the way it is. And so this is another opportunity to kind of get some public process on it. So what we're going to do, if you guys move forward with this today, is we'll update that feasibility study to include the paved dual surface option on the soft surface section right now of the Rio Grande. We're going to do an evaluation of public benefits. Dave calls it a return on investment, but we never look at it as a return on investment because we're not charging any money on this. So we're really looking at what are the public benefits for this? And, when you look at that, it's commuting is a big thing. It's like we want to really assess what the commute use could be. But we also want to analyze the potential of, what's the recreation benefits of this? And we know they're big, but let's get it down, let's get it out there before we go into the public process. So we're going to start doing that. We're also going to look at a funding capacity analysis. It's kind of looking at what grants are out there, what are available, potentially from CDOT, from the federal government, from other organizations to give you a feel of like, okay, if we move forward with this in the future, what grants are there available and timing and all that stuff. And then the other thing we're going to look at is we're going to work with our team on the phasing so people can understand what phases would be, what we could do with all the different phases of it. And then once we get that information, it'll take a few months to potentially to the fall to get that. And then what we would do with the public process is we would run a very rigid public process with, and this would be one, we do a lot of public process where you can get the feel for things. This one, we want to do more statistically analyze it and make sure that we're getting the feedback we need or you guys need to make a final decision coming forward. And so that will include online surveys, that will include public meetings in different spots and locations. It will, we're thinking about other ways of getting information from the public. We've done really well in the past. We usually do get pretty good participation in these public processes. Sky Mountain Park, we received over 1,000 people responding it, and most of them just liked it. So for this one, I think we'll get more. And so we could potentially put it out more as a survey that goes to specific people throughout so we can get some statistical analysis of it and be able to give you some more information. And then once we do all of that, then we would come back to the open space boards and the E.O.T.C. And the E.O.T.C. is a great place to go because I've got, for me, all the BOCC on it. Austin's got all the city council on it. And Clint and has the Snowmass Town Council. So, one of the things that we're going to do is we're also going to make sure that all the open space programs are involved, including Snowmass Village with the poster board, and see where we're at. And, we say spring of 2023, but will it be longer? It could be. We're not giving it a deadline. We're going to see what the public tells us and let that be more of the deadline. And then come back to you guys with all that information and see where we go.
Sounds good. Patty?
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. I'm supportive of the public process. I don't think we can move forward without knowing what the public would like us to do there. I think it's gonna be very interesting information that's gathered. I still have a lot of questions about the project, about which choice, which bridge, which impact, and what we're gonna gain at the end of the day. What is going to be our return on, what was it, financial, what was it you say, Dave? Yeah.
What's our return on investment?
Return on investment without charging people to use the trail. I think we need to, I don't see how we cannot move forward on this. I mean, I don't see how we can just say yes to this or no to the whole thing without knowing what the public would like us to do. After all, we do represent the public. Thanks.
You bet. Steve?
I too would be in favor of going forward with the public process. I would like to propose two different things today, which I think are viable options, which I think the public should have all viable options in front of them so they can help decide, make up their mind on it. And one I mentioned previously would be a new type of bus, a train on wheels, kind of a concept of a bus where people could, this one would not be building any bridge whatsoever. It would not be building a bike trail from Brush Creek to the ABC. Instead, the people would load their bikes on these buses or trains on rubber and just ride to the ABC from on the bus. The service would be free, would encourage people. If you charge people to $2 to put your bike on a rafta bus, that discourages them from using their bicycle. But if it would be possible to do a kind of a survey as part of the process to see what kinds of bus equipment are out there that might work for such an operation. And so I don't picture this being the down valley buses, but it would be a Brush Creek into Aspen going back and forth, that people could put their bikes, their luggage for the airport, their baby strollers, everything would just wheel right on in the standing room area on the bus.
So you're talking about like,
so
Rapta
that's,
has a Bustang. You remember that Bustang? They had a special bus that you could bring your bike on, and actually there were racks, and it was, and so you're talking about a dedicated Bustang that would go come back and forth.
well, what I would see is every bus from Aspen to the Brush Creek would be this kind of bus, just going back and forth. It wouldn't go down valley beyond Brush Creek, though, is how I envision it anyhow. My second concept would be having lower bridges crossing the Roaring Fork. So, and I think this would work to start down where the Aspen Mass Trail goes down, have a bridge that's not at the top of the plateau, which is highly visible bridge and not necessarily good looking. If it sits down a little bit below the rim, it would be a shorter bridge. The cost would be much less for the bridge. It would be much less visible. I think it might be more palatable to the people, to the public. And I see it going, it wouldn't necessarily have to go clear to like the Stein Bridge, but maybe it could cross somewhere in the vicinity of Tom Sardi's house and go back over to the highway there, and then have the bike lane along, below the ABC down, partway down there to somewhere a little bit past Tom Sardi's house or something like that.
And we did look at that. We looked at trying to drop the bridge as far as possible. The biggest problem is you lose ADA, because the Aspen Nass right now is not ADA accessible. So it's something you could ask, but it's also a bigger question to the board. We were trying to keep this as an ADA accessible, because the Rio is ADA accessible. And so if you drop it down, it's really hard to keep that ADA because you have a 5% or less grade. And to be able to do that on a hillside is really difficult. But, it's one of those things where you don't always have to meet that if that's it.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that the existing conceptual design, if you will, does incorporate lowering the bridge height somewhat for the same reasons you're describing. Mainly, we were thinking about the visual impacts and trying to hide them a little bit, but also, you're right, the lower we go, the shorter the bridge. But there's a sweet spot there, and if we can't make those grades too steep.
That's the only issue. So we dropped them as far as we could to get them lower. If you looked at the grade changes where the bridges actually hit, they're dropped low, but we're at that point where we've got to make determinations if we're going to keep it ADA or not. And it's a tough one. I don't know how to ask that for the public, but I think if the public comes back with a major opposition to the look of these bridges, then we could move into that. Because yes, every 10, 20 feet you go down, we reduce the size of the bridge. It's less cheap and you don't see it as much. But once you get it to a point, to make it ADA would be really difficult or impossible. Those are the trade-offs that we have. So.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to put those ideas out there. I think it'd be worth having them sort of, even if you're explaining that you looked at that and rejected it for the reasons you gave, I think the public should get to look at anything that seems like a viable option to them.
Well, and I think we can ask the question in the public survey about additional bus service. And we can ask that question without knowing exactly what it is. And you can ask it, it's like, another option is just to increase the bus service and to make the buses more bicycle friendly and free. And would that change your attitude? We'll figure it out in the process, but if you guys are all good with that, we can add that question.
Okay, thanks.
I think the public process is really important. And when a bridge was proposed from Brush Creek Park and Ride years ago, was the major opposition the visual impact?
The public process on that there was support for it. I think the Board of County Commissioners at the time were not ready to commit to that. And so, we had support to do it. We didn't go through a process like we're doing this. So it's not the same. This is going to be a lot more, this is going to be specific to it. So we had support to do it. It wasn't done in a way that the BOCC felt comfortable going, yeah, let's spend $8 million to do this. So at the time, they were more like, let's do this step. They did the paving from McLean Flats Road to where it is today, and we upgraded the soft surface to make it a lot more road bike friendly. And so they were like, let's see that, and then we'll come back and discuss it again in the future. So now we're in the future.
Great.
You have some people.
Rachel has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just have to say, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I see this primarily as a recreational amenity, and I think we should absolutely go forward with the public process to understand if there really is a commuter aspect to it, and if so, how much. But I would see the vast majority of the cost sharing of this on the future coming from Pickens County Open Space and Trails and the city of Aspen. So I do think the timing is important to find out this information and how much support this project may have, because the city is going to be going for a renewal of its open space tax potentially this November. And if this is one of the potential projects we might be funding from that would be important information. But I said this to Dave when we looked at our preview on this. If people wanted to bike into Aspen, they can very easily just come into the Buttermilk Park and Ride lot and pick up a trail there. And this is it was not done at the time with the county commissioner. I was on the board, and a lot of it had to do with the cost and how much would $8 million at that time amenity be used or desirable. I'd love to connect the Airport Business Center to the Brush Creek Park and Ride lot, but I don't see it as a transportation amenity for the most part. It's what, maybe 3/4 of a mile to the business center or a little further in, and I don't see where we have the extra money or extra drivers to have bicycle-only buses, especially out of EOTC funding. And I'd like to have a little research done on back in the day when we had the old Maroon Creek Bridge and we wanted a separated bike path, built a bridge. I think one of the sections of that is actually in Brush Creek now as a Brush Creek trail crossing. And Jack Hatfield was pretty adamant that he felt it was not a legitimate use of EOTC money that was given towards mass transit. And I don't know that there's been new determinations, but my best recollection is we did not use EOTC money for that temporary bridge that lasted about 10 years. And it was a public safety improvement and an amenity. And I do support those sort of things. But when I look at the incredible number of potential transportation improvements that we are going to need to fund, I have a hard time making a bicycle improvement. And I need to know, again, how many people, how many cars would this potentially take off the entrance to Aspen to begin to justify what share of participation in the project in the long run? Thank you.
Thanks. And Kelly?
I really want to see that old history of how was the Maroon Creek bike bridge alignment next to the old Maroon Creek Bridge paid for, because I do not think we were able to use EOTC money once it was investigated.
All right, thank you. Kelly?
Okay, thanks. We're getting quite a bit of an echo feedback, so I don't know how to resolve that, but hopefully that's not happening when I'm talking. I guess I'm curious as to what RAPTA's role, or if they have a role in helping with this public outreach process at all, is my first question. And then my second question is, it occurs to me that we could be collecting commuter data about, winter commuter data on the Rio Grande already, and we could be collecting commuter data about the current AABC to Aspen stretch to at least help us kind of proof the data and the questions, and also demonstrate, where are we at? What are the current conditions that we're looking to build on?
Did you guys want to respond, or?
Well, to respond to the RAFTA thing, so far RAFTA has not been involved in this. Obviously, trying to get a commuter sense, it might make sense to bring them in to talk about that, and we will. And so, but, RAFTA at this time was, this part of the Rio Grande Trail is not a RAFTA trail. It's fully 100% a Picken County trail. So they're not involved in the trail piece of it. But to be with part of the park and ride, we can check in with RAFTA on it and see where we can go, because those are the pieces of the study that we're going to figure out. And using bus people and people from the bus and all that could be a really great way of collecting some data.
And I'll just add that I think we could relatively easily collect data on the stretch of the AABC trail into town. Obviously, we have the North 40, Burlingame, lots of commuters that are using it. It won't necessarily answer who might be willing to get on their bikes at the Brush Creek lot, but we could start to assess what kind of commuter usership there is on that stretch of trail from the AABC into town. And I know we've got Bike to Work Day coming up at some point this summer. There's a number of ways that we can collect a lot of surveys and do that sort of thing.
And we're looking at ways to do it on the Rio overall. Our rangers, You know, they're out there all the time, and they see a lot more people in the morning, especially since we've allowed e-bikes. And so there's definitely more commuting from Down Valley to it. One of the things we're going to connect to is the W/J neighborhood. You know, there's a neighborhood there that, you know, would love access. We've talked to them, but we now need to talk to them about, do they, you know, a lot of them don't want to necessarily bike into Aspen. They just want to connect to the Brush Creek Park and Ride and grab a bus, because the current bus is not nearly what BRT is going into town. So there are communities there, and, you know, that's also what, you know, we'll find out from the Town of Snowmass Village and also Brush Creek Village and, you know, the communities, you know, Aspen Village and stuff like that. So this is a pretty robust, we haven't fully figured it out yet, but it's going to be, and it's going to take time. That's why you guys won't see this until this time next year. So, but we want to connect all those pieces.
Great. Ward, you have a question?
Yeah, I have some comments. I think we should proceed with the public process, but in that process, Bill, Mayor Mattson, you mentioned that the CMC a few years ago had a full presentation. So in the public process, I would like to see all of those options that were considered be represented and reasons why we wound up with what we were proposing. I think part of the public process was that to do a traffic release study, and that addresses, I think, Rachel's concerns if it's a recreational use or if it's a transportation and commuter use. The funding is important, as Rachel says. We want to make sure we can use EoTC funds for this, and I think that means that it has to be a commuter or traffic issue or relief. Just a comment on the Buttermilk Park and Ride. Oftentimes the traffic is backed up quite a ways before you get to Buttermilk. So I think the Park and Ride where it is now is a better option. And then just finally to Steve's question about what I've been advocating is the trackless tram constantly between Park and Ride and Ruby Park, but I think that's more in line with the entrance to Aspen than it is with connection between the AABC and the Park and Ride. Thank you.
Okay, David Johnson.
You know, I raised my hand when we were talking about RAFTA's role in this, and I think, unless you want to hear something else from me, I think that it was adequately covered by Mr. Tenenbaum.
Okay, Greg, you put your hand down.
Sorry.
You had your question answered, Greg?
Mostly I just wanted to say I support the process. I think we should keep our minds open to it, question the assumptions being made here, but certainly let's go for the thorough process. I support that and just want to weigh in that I think we may be surprised as we see what's trending in mobility and what people and who might use it is an interesting question worth exploring. So thank you.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I just want to say I've got some acquaintances that live out at the North 40. They have young children, and they actually do use the bike trail to get their kids to daycare and go to work. We have a lot of people who actually use the opportunity to get exercise because we have so many people that are concerned about exercising enough. So my opinion is, and especially with the entrance to Aspen on our agenda and the fact that the bridge is going to have to be replaced, and the fact that the Pitkin County Airport's going to be redeveloped at some point, I think we're going to have more traffic impacts, and I think this trail is another option to help ease those impacts And I'd just like to finish by saying, build it and they will come.
Kelly?
Thanks. I forgot to comment. It might help in this process to also just like briefly present the alternatives that have been excluded with the justifications related to them, so that the public understands, the thorough vetting.
Definitely. We will definitely do that. I agree.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the recreational components are huge. I mean, just being able to go from, say, Snowmass Village to the Brush Creek Park and Ride, go across a bridge and cross-country ski on the Rio Grande or bike. I think there's a lot of recreational opportunities. I think flushing out those commuter opportunities is going to be a good part of the public process.
Yeah. We agree.
And the cost.
Oh, yeah, that.
Oh, yeah, the cost.
And that's why we're doing the funding capacity analysis, because part of that is, is the EoTC the board, like the funding mechanism? It might not. So, we have to figure out other ways to do it. Obviously, Pickens County Open Space and Trails has a trails fund and it's everybody here. Everyone in Pickens County puts into the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Fund. So there's a piece of our funding that can go to this. And it's, we did the Castle Creek to Music School project a few years ago. And, right now it's refilling. So it will have capacity. I don't think it cannot handle the whole thing, but, maybe with the city, and if it does come out as a recreation in EoTC, we just wanted to make sure the EoTC was involved, because this, as a lot of you kind of said, this could have a commuting impact, and it could change. Things are going to change in the future, and we just don't know. And this could be a viable option for more commuting in the future. Especially, we cycle e-bikes. I don't know if you guys have used one, but they get better, and it's a nice little way to get off the bus and do that. So, or park there and do that, and then come back, and you're right on the way out. So, but we'll figure it out. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. And when we start to do the public process, one of the things that it's not really on here, but we will give you guys updates. We'll give all the boards updates. It won't be formal presentations, but we'll be able to put things in your packets to tell you what it is. So you don't just get it all at the end and go, what? So that's one thing we will commit to.
I just wanted to touch quickly on the use of EoTC funds for this project. And I would say that we would need to address this similarly to the way we funded or provided funds to the Maroon Creek Roundabout. In that we would need to look for that rational nexus between where it's supporting transit and where it doesn't. So this analysis and the information that we get will help us start to parse out where that line is. It's clear in my mind, that there is going to be some degree of benefit to commuters. What's not clear is to what extent. So that's something that we need to figure out. And the other thing too is that even if this is taking trips off the road that are for recreational purposes, so if someone might have come farther into town to say take a bike trip, but now they're willing to stop at Brush Creek Park and Ride, we're preventing that trip from going farther into town. So that's the same vehicle trip off the road as if they're going to work. So we need to take those into account as well.
That's a good point.
If I could add in just a couple more comments. I think that there's going to be some real coordination effort that's important here. Just last night or Tuesday night at our regular meeting, we heard that the city is beginning its polling work on the potential of a renewal of our halfpenny open space and trails tax. And so I just don't want the two different public outreaches to get confusing to people, that if they don't like this project, they should vote against our tax, or they like this project and then our tax isn't including it in the ballot language, because we're not going to have results till the spring of 2023. So I just want the teams there to really try to work that out and try to avoid any confusion with the public. And then, I'd be the first again to agree. I think there will be some commuter benefits. Maybe some people will get on the bus who could ride in, or others connect who need that connection. I see it as a very important trail connection. But, when you measure the commuter impact, how do you do that? Do you look at the totality of the traffic that comes in every day and the number of cars and say, what percentage is this number of commuters of the overall commuting public? Or how does it fit into our transportation studies? Is it X percentage of RAFTA ridership that will see an increase? So I really think that having a better understanding of the metrics of how this is measured and what it's compared against is going to be an important component to having the appropriate funding allocations to complete it. Thank you.
And Kelly? No, Skippy?
Yeah.
Your hands up, Kelly.
Thank you, guys. First, I'm supportive of moving forward and kind of checking in with the public and refining our own research. For me, when we're a year from now, when we're coming back to evaluate this, I will be judging this not on the recreational side, but on the transit side. I think, if we want to have a recreational experience, there's like more joy per pedal. We already have an option out there. And not that this wouldn't be awesome and enjoyable, but I just think if this is a recreational exercise, there's a lot of better ways to spend $22 million. However, I will be looking at this as how can this project be in service of reimagining transportation in the Upper Valley so that we, at least in Aspen and potentially in Snowmass, can transition our communities away from the personal automobile and give that space back to affordable business, community, all of those things that I think we value a lot more than parked cars. I do think this can be a critical element of that. It's not going to do it in and of itself. So I'm really looking to understand at a more granular level what that potential change in transit behavior can be. I think that's going to be more complicated than just saying, hey, you drive now and you live in Carbondale, would you get on a bike? It may be looking at examples from other communities in Europe, for instance, or Asia, who have transitioned from automobile to bicycle and pedestrian. What did that look like? Presenting that so people can actually see the vision, maybe comparing that data. What did Helsinki's voters say, and then what did they end up doing, so that we can kind of interpolate that as well, I think would be really helpful. So that's really what I'm looking for when we come back in a year and what will be critical for me in making that decision. And to Steve, to your point, and Ward's always talking about trackless trams, because I do view this as part and parcel to the bigger picture, which could include or maybe will include the entrance to Aspen and a kind of high-speed transit corridor, of which a trackless tram is a great potential option. And so thinking about how those pieces work together in the minds of the user as well, you could have like a great engine for a car, but until you hook it up to some wheels and a transmission, it's going to sit there dormant. And so this may be the same. This may arrive before those other pieces of congestion charging and direct trackless tram access, that all of a sudden, when put together, this gets used a lot more. And so how can we sort of forecast and understand that, knowing that this may be a first in? And what I heard Steve saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of utilizing that mechanism of a trackless tram as almost a channel for bicycles, right? Where you show up and everyone just kind of goes on, and there's 3 deep, and so you can get 200 bikes on there, and then you get off and you keep riding. I think that's interesting. And Rachel raises a great point. We have a serious shortage of RAFTA drivers now, but in the 10 years before this is really going to be here, if they're on a dedicated lane, they're going to be autonomous anyways. So I think we should still look at that.
All right, any other comments? David?
The only thing I would say is that I appreciate tying it back essentially to what you heard at your retreat a few weeks ago in terms of the IMS and that systematic approach. At this point where we are in transportation in this valley, there really isn't that silver bullet anymore. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in my next presentation, but we're really looking at an all of the above approach, and this fits into that all of the above component. And specifically, if you're thinking about the IMS, it is a BRT enhancement in terms of creating more access to that hub. that transit hub that has been created at Brush Creek.
So, Mr. Mayor, would you entertain a motion?
I would.
I would like to make a motion to approve authorizing the staff recommendation to initiate the public process and data gathering phase of the AABC Brush Creek Park and Ride Trail connection.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Steve?
This does say public hearing. Are we going to see if any members of the public have comments on this before we
good
vote? I think
catch.
we should.
Yeah, thank you. Good catch, Steve.
catch, Steve.
This is technically a public hearing, so we should open it up to the public before.
Well, we can still have a motion on the table and get public hearing.
Okay.
Or
Doug?
when it says public hearing on our agenda, does that mean that that's part of the process we're going through is just to get more, we want to hear from the public kind of a thing, a generic public hearing? Or are we doing a public hearing right now if any members of the public want to comment?
You're doing a public hearing right now, as, you know, by hearing this item today. And by your IGA, doing an administrative direction does require that. So it really just is a matter of opening it up to see if we do have any members of the public that would like to speak.
And I think following the process, we should have the public hearing before we have the vote on our motion.
Well, we will, but we can still leave the motion on the table, but the mayor can open the public hearing.
Is there anyone in the room that would like to make a public comment? Anybody online, Doug?
I am not seeing anybody that has responded yet.
Okay.
So now we can close the public hearing.
Let's go ahead then and vote by jurisdiction. Patty, would you like to start?
Pitkin County, Kelly McNicholas Curry,
Yes.
Greg Poshman,
Yes.
Steve Child,
Aye.
Patty Clapper, yes.
John, would you like to do it for Aspen?
Sure. John Doyle, I'll vote yes. Ward?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
And Skippy?
Indeed.
All right, and for Snowmass Village, Tom Fritzstein,
Yes.
Melissa Shank,
Yeah.
and Bill Madsen, yes. All right.
Carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck with the public process.
Good luck. We'll see.
It'll be interesting.
Before you leave.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the HOV lane enforcement, staff analysis and review.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This next action item, as mentioned, is HOV lane enforcement. Before we get into the options and the real meat of the analysis, I did want to take a step back a little bit and just talk about how we got here and where are we going with this. So this conversation really came up in 2016 and 2017 in around increasing HOV compliance on Highway 82 as a result of the Integrated Mobility Systems Study, so the IMS, that was conducted by the Community Forum Task Force on Transportation Mobility. So this graphic that you see here on the right, this should look familiar to you at this point. These are the 5 tenets that the Community Forum came up with. So John Bennett and Crystal Logan presented this to you at your retreat. We are looking at one item or one piece of these strategies, which is HOV lane enforcement, as a part of this analysis. The other strategies that have been identified is phased BRT enhancements, ride hailing, ride sharing, and congestion reduction measures. And we talked quite a bit about congestion reduction measures during the retreat itself. So as a result of the IMS and the development of that concept, we did two studies that were funded by the EOTC in 2020 and 2021. And both of these studies, with two separate teams, independently recommended increasing HOV compliance on Highway 82. So the first one was done by Fair and Peers. This one was looking at the greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled, effectiveness of each of the components of the IMS. And you heard from Chris Bryland and Marissa Millam also at the retreat on this study itself. A second study that was conducted at the same time, but on separate tracks, was the Upper Valley Transit Enhancement Study. This one was done by Mead and Hunt and was looking specifically at how we can increase transit efficiency as well as bicycle and pedestrian access to transit along the Highway 82 corridor. And both of those recommended essentially having an effective HOV lane that had a degree of compliance to it. And from that point, staff recommended as a part of the near-term transit improvement program that HOV, this analysis be added as a Tier 1 priority to look at what the options are available to the EoTC in order to progress compliance within that HOV lane. And then it was added to the 2022 EoTC work plan, and it was scheduled here this afternoon. So in terms of the next steps, it is really moving it into the development of a rideshare app, which moves into the ride-sharing component. So ride-sharing itself was identified in the program as a Tier 2 priority, specifically because both of these studies said, hey, you really need to have a carrot for these people who are traveling by HOV in order to have them use that ride-sharing app. So that's how that order was established. And then to go back to some of the takeaways that we were just discussing, same things from that Fair and Peers study is that all of those 5 strategies, they are interdependent. They all work together as a, as a program. So there's not really one silver bullet necessarily that you can say, if we do X, we're going to achieve all of our goals. It's really, we're at the point where we need to be doing all of the above. And again, this also should look familiar from the Fair and Peers study. So this is what they recommended in terms of the moving forward with the program. As you can see on the left side, ride hailing by itself, they said that there's really no VMT or greenhouse gas emissions benefit there. They also, you can really plug that in with ride sharing at this point or HOV lane enforcement. So if you just do any one of those, Fair and Peers said you're really not going to see much in the way of greenhouse gas or VMT reductions. However, they did identify that HOV lane enforcement and really getting toward that compliance piece has a strong multiplier effect on the other strategies. So they still recommended that we move into the HOV lane compliance realm early on so that we can see that multiplier effect as early as possible. So you can see, according to their analysis, at the point where we have HOV compliance and ride sharing, we're looking at potentially reducing greenhouse gas emissions by about 620,000 metric tons per year. And that increases as we move forward with other projects. So you can see phased BRT enhancements. The trail connection that we were just discussing then fits into that category. So we're continually working toward that goal of piecing this together. To tie it back to the real carrot for the HOV drivers, that really came out of the Mead and Hunt study and the Upper Valley Transit Enhancement Study. And what they showed was that if we did have compliance on the HOV lane between Basalt and the airport, HOV drivers could expect up to a 10-minute benefit in travel times if we did have compliance there. We currently have virtually no compliance, so there is really no time savings for those who are traveling by high occupancy vehicles. We do have a good number of people who do it, but we don't have that carrot out there for them currently. And as a little bit of background on the HOV lanes themselves, they were approved between Basalt and the airport as a part of the Basalt to Buttermilk Record of Decision, so these were signed off on by Federal Highways Administration and CDOT. They were built between 1996 and 2004. So they've been around for a number of years, been through a few different iterations of levels of enforcement that's occurred on them. And they are in the right lane in order to accommodate RAPTA buses. So that was intentional, even though it is kind of countercultural for us in the United States to have them there. And I think that causes a certain degree of anxiety for drivers having them in the right lane. But they were intended to be a transportation demand management measure in order to increase carpooling and transit ridership. So we do, bless you, we do currently have the infrastructure in place, but again, the enforcement side has fluctuated over the years. And looking at the lanes, I think as you're all aware, they're not in effect 24 hours a day. They're only in effect Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the up valley direction, and from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the down valley direction. And in order to legally utilize the lanes, you are required to have 2+ occupants in the vehicle to qualify. Children do qualify as an occupant in these lanes. And we also have parameters that allow motorcyclists and alternative fuel vehicles to use the lane with only 1 occupant. So the current enforcement, I have had conversations with Colorado State Patrol and Pickens County Sheriff's Office, and both acknowledge the need for HOV lane enforcement. But as a Sheriff's Office or State Patrol, they have higher levels of priority. Life, safety, and property are always up there in terms of the top 3. And I don't think that there's any argument out there saying that we want to reprioritize anything for the Sheriff's Office or the State Patrol. We're simply looking to potentially add resources or technology that enables that enforcement. I would note as well, I see that we've got Jared Rapp on the phone. So he is with Colorado State Patrol. If you have any questions later, he'll be able to answer those questions from his perspective. I believe Alex Burchetta might be on. I don't see him on the list right now, but he might be jumping on here. He's with Pickens County Sheriff's Office. But it's also worth considering as well that both the CSP and Pickens County Sheriff's Office, as again, I think you're all aware, regularly experience staff shortages. So those competing priorities are they're always competing. So there's, again, that has led to that ebb and flow in terms of HOV enforcement on Highway 82. But statewide, I think it's important to remember as well that enforcement on HOV lanes can only be done by a law enforcement officer. So in terms of issuing a citation, that law enforcement officer has to be present there in order to issue that. So that does include what you think about it in terms of the express lanes on I-70 and the express lanes on Highway 36 between Boulder and Denver. Some of the advantages that they have there is that they have these transmitter tags that I have here on the screen where the user switches between HOV and toll. And if you look at it, it actually switches on the backside too. And the reason for that is when the vehicle is driving down the road, the sheriff's or the state trooper can see whether that vehicle has switched it to toll or HOV so that they have a heads up as to whether they should be checking for compliance. Because we don't otherwise have tolling on Highway 82, we don't have the tags, so they don't have that tool at their disposal. And similarly, nationwide, tolling in general has been shown to increase compliance. And again, we don't have the tolling on Highway 82, so we don't have that incentive as well. But that said, tolling is not the silver bullet either, so every jurisdiction that has tolling still struggles with violators and trying to recoup all of the tolling that people are owed to the system. So on Highway 82, the main motivation that we have for drivers is really that threat of a citation if they're driving that lane during the active periods and they don't have the number of occupants. So as a part of this memo and what you have in front of you, I identified 3 different options. So I set these out before going into it in terms of what I thought I should be analyzing. The first one is increasing the sheriff or Colorado State Patrol staffing or funding for overtime. This is essentially a method from the EoTC perspective, providing funds in order to provide those resources for that overtime or additional staff. Option 2 is automating verification and or enforcement. And option 3 is driver education. And I think that while they're spelled out kind of in that siloed fashion, driver education in particular should be applied to either one. So they shouldn't be thought of as necessarily either or, but probably yes and. So to talk a little bit about the option one, this is increasing sheriff and or Colorado State Patrol staffing or funding. This is actually a method that I found is pretty common throughout the country, where typically a Metropolitan Planning Organization or MPO provides funding to local sheriff's offices or the state troopers in order to patrol the HOV lanes as an overtime mechanism. So that's essentially the same format that we're looking at here. Again, it's important to remember that law enforcement officers are necessary for the issuance of citations. So this does get those, potentially get those law enforcement officers out there. So this is the most direct way to actually conduct that enforcement. The increased presence of law enforcement also has the added benefit of potentially controlling speed and aggressive driving issues. Because think of it as the driving public, you don't necessarily know why that sheriff or state trooper is out there if they're looking for someone in particular or for something in particular, but everyone tends to behave better when they see the state trooper or the sheriff. But there are a number of implementation strategies or challenges as well as personnel challenges that I think are important to keep in mind with this approach. One is that law enforcement cannot catch every violator. I think that we're all familiar with that with speeders and aggressive driving. There's always speeders out there regardless of the number of sheriffs or troopers that you put on the highway. So 100% compliance I don't think is a goal that's achievable. If we can increase the compliance and provide that incentive for HOV drivers, that's really that incremental step forward that we'd be looking for. It's also difficult to determine the occupants in a vehicle. So imagine if from the troopers or the sheriff's perspective, you've got a vehicle passing by you at 55, 65 miles an hour. You've got just a matter of seconds to try to make a determination as to whether they have the correct number of occupants. And in our system here, where particularly children qualify as an occupant, and they're potentially in the back seat, they're in car seats, they're underneath the threshold of the window, oftentimes it's very difficult to identify those passengers. In addition, as a part of our HOV lane, alternative fuel vehicles count. And if you think back to when these lanes were put in place between 96 and 2004, there was really only one alternative fuel vehicle on the road. You had the Toyota Prius, and you couldn't mistake a Toyota Prius from just about anything else on the road at that time.
Kaya Williams.
At this point, we've got electric vehicles that look just like every other vehicle on the road.
Kaya Williams.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Trying to mute.
Is now exiting.
Sorry about that. Let somebody in and then they.
Okay, let me know when we're back.
I would continue with your.
Okay. Are you guys online able to hear me okay? Okay. So just touching on the alternative fuel vehicles and the difficulty at this point in terms of determining what an alternative fuel vehicle is. We've got F-150s now coming onto the road that look virtually virtually similar to a gasoline or diesel version. So those are challenges that we have today, and they're going to become increasing challenges as we go down the road. In addition, as we're trying to promote alternative fuel vehicles, there's going to be more alternative fuel vehicles. So I think that while I think that we are still able to come up with an advantage, at this point, the advantage will continue to erode as more alternative fuel vehicles do come on the road. And then finally, it's important to consider safety concerns for both the officers and those who are pulled over, as well as the impacts to other drivers if they are pulled over. So think about any law enforcement action on a highway. It tends to slow down traffic. It can cause traffic congestions on its own. And there's also safety concerns for those law enforcement officers and the people who are pulled over. And then finally, there's personnel challenges in terms of finding law enforcement staff. So even if funding is available, you still have to have the staff. So staff to make it happen. And the law enforcement officers themselves are often overtaxed, and this could be another way of just asking them to do
Unknown
more,
participant is now joining.
which just poses, just increases the challenge. And then moving on to option 2, just want to make sure everyone online can still hear. Okay. Moving on to option 2, this is automating verification and or enforcement. And I think this is to a certain degree, and after all of the challenges with using law enforcement officers to do this, I think this is an appealing way to go. And again, it's important to remember that law enforcement officers are necessary to issue any citation. So while there are technologies available, none of them are able to issue a citation to a driver within the state of Colorado. But there are two primary technological approaches. We've got roadside cameras, which I think is the first thing that we all think of when we think of a technology approach. And the other one that appears to be the upcoming technology is app-based verification. Now, I'll touch on roadside cameras first. I think that these are, in terms of a technology, is exactly what you'd think, a camera on the side of the road managed by a government agency or subcontracted out to a third-party vendor. But the technology has proven that while it's highly effective, so it's in some cases over 95% effective, it still hasn't been shown to be effective enough, even in the states that will allow automated citations, to start issuing those citations. So I didn't find any instances where this has been used where they've actually automated that citation process because it's just not close enough to 100% effective. The other thing is that they've all been utilized on high occupancy toll lanes. So I didn't find any instances where they're used on high occupancy vehicle only lanes. They've primarily been used on tolling lanes where they're used to verify the high occupancy vehicles and then issue or collect those tolls that that driver should have paid, but they were trying to evade. So they're not actually issuing any fines or any citations. They're simply collecting the fees that they were otherwise owed. In addition, they do need to be paired with license plate readers, so it's not just the equipment of the cameras themselves. You also have to have the license plate readers there, so the cameras say yes or no, we have the correct number of occupants, and then the license plate readers verify that that vehicle is actually in that lane, in the high occupancy vehicle lane, and is able to get the registration for that vehicle if they are not in compliance. Another thing that I came up with or ran up against several times with the roadside cameras is jurisdictions that didn't adopt them because they had strong privacy concerns amongst their constituencies. And particularly on the cameras where the data is managed within the government agency or a third-party vendor, it's all accumulated at one location. And that caused significant concern amongst several of the jurisdictions that I looked at. But I do have a couple pictures here of equipment that is being tested now. So this is from Envision.ai. It's a Toronto-based company. The one on the left, this is on the toll road of Highway 95 and 395 in Virginia. Again, verifying the occupancy within the vehicles and then back charging tolls and providing educational letters to those who are misusing the lanes. And then in Ilan, Israel, they are testing the equipment now since 2021. Apparently, Israel is much farther ahead than much of the rest of the world in terms of this type of technology. So they're pioneering this right now. But something I did learn as well is that CDOT is currently, or they will be moving into a testing phase for roadside camera-based technology, as well as the app-based technology, which I'll talk about next. And they're starting these tests here this summer and this fall. So while there's no guarantee in terms of the outcome, they are looking at it, but there is currently no system-wide adopted roadside camera or app-based technology. And it's important to remember that Highway 82 is a CDOT highway, so anything that we would do would need to be approved by CDOT. So to talk a little bit about the app-based verification, so this was is really more or less the cutting edge of the verification systems that are out there, and I think is really the future of what we'll see in terms of HOV and high occupancy toll compliance moving forward. So I think it's just a matter of time before we see it in Colorado and start seeing it around the country. But it's important to remember again that this is a verification system, not an enforcement system, so it's not issuing citations again. But there are two primary players in this field right now. It's a dynamic field. It's changing pretty quickly. But the primary players right now are GoKarma, and their nearest market is in the Dallas metro area. And we also have Ride Flag in the Salt Lake City metro area. Again, it's a new technology, not within Colorado, and these are both similar to the camera-based technology, are all on high occupancy toll lanes. So they are collecting the back tolls just like the roadside cameras are doing, and they're also issuing education letters for those who are found to be in violation. So in an HOV-only application, our only ability to utilize the app-based verification would be issuance of education letters because we don't have that tolling in place. They are also paired with license plate readers, so they do require that on-the-ground infrastructure, even though they don't have the cameras themselves. And part of the reason why they're being more widely adopted than the cameras is because they have lower privacy concerns than the cameras themselves, primarily because each user's information is held locally within their smartphone, and it's not being collected by the central government or central government agency or the third-party vendor. So all that app is doing is communicating to the system saying, yes, this vehicle does or does not have the required number of occupants. It's not saying anything more about those occupants or taking pictures of the vehicle. But both RideFlag and GoKarma do provide back office services. So the agencies that have gone with them, they provide services where they collect the information in terms of violators, they manually process those violations, and they send out those violation letters. So those violation letters are coming from the company, not specifically from the local government agency. And I would add too that in terms of our situation here, since we are not otherwise told, the cost would be entirely borne by the local agency. So part of the reason why this has been so attractive to tolling agencies in particular is because they know that they've got a certain percentage of violators out there, and they know the toll revenues that they're losing, and they've found that these app-based systems more than pay for themselves in terms of recouping that tolling cost. Again, because we don't have tolling, we don't have that benefit. I also question the effectiveness of it here in our valley because we are so tourist-based. I think that we would have a good number of users that would come through, inadvertently drive down the lane or advertently drive down the HOV lane. And by the time they get an education letter in the mail, they have come and gone and may or may not come back. So I foresee it being just this cycle of sending out education letters to people who may or may not ever be educated by it. And again, CDOT is looking to conduct a test of these occupation detection technologies, including these app-based systems here starting this summer. So I think it's an important step forward, particularly for our small valley, and looking at these technologies. I think it's important that it be adopted on a more wide basis before we start going down that path. I did want to spend a couple minutes, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, trying to demystify how this looks from the user's perspective. And starting with GoKarma, so this is a system that is advertised as being one of the most user-friendly from the standpoint that each time the driver goes down the lane, they don't have to start or stop the application. So they get in their car, they have 2 or 3 occupants. Each of those occupants are required to have a smartphone and the app on their smartphone. And that app then triggers automatically through a geofence as they're traveling down Highway 82, for instance. So the geofence starts the app, communicates to the system to say, hey, we've got 2, 3, 4, whatever the number of people is in the vehicle. That talks then to the license plate readers that says, yes, the vehicle is in the HOV lane, and says yes or no, that vehicle is in compliance with the HOV requirement or is not, and is then issued a lane use violation or is not issued by lane use violation.
So my 6-month-old grandson would have to have a smartphone in the back seat.
They do have options, so they recognize that issue, and so the smartphones communicate with each other via Bluetooth and their location devices. So they use the two to determine whether you're in the same vehicle. And for those who have children or people who don't have smartphones, they offer essentially a Bluetooth device that they provide for free to people who don't otherwise have a smartphone. So they have that, but that is an issue. And then looking at RideFlag, just to differentiate the two, one of the benefits to RideFlag is each occupant does not have to have a smartphone. However, before and after the trip, the user has to start the app, take a picture of everyone in the vehicle. The technology is such that it can recognize what a face looks like. So it counts the number of occupants based on the number of faces it recognizes, and then communicates that to the system. And when the vehicle goes by the license plate counter, it says yes or no, it's in compliance with the number of occupants or is not in compliance. The good side to this one is that not every user has to have a smartphone in order for it to work. But that's generally how it works. Ride Flag is currently in use in Salt Lake City. Go Karma is currently used in Dallas. And then option 3, I think this one is pretty straightforward in terms of driver education, but one of the things that I did come across talking to a number of folks about this is that driver education alone has very little impact. So you can do a lot of education and you can really not expect much benefit back from it. So it really needs to be paired with some sort of verification or some sort of enforcement in order to see that benefit. We are able to utilize the Brush Creek DMS. We do have some approved messages. Just anticipating this coming, I had some messages approved through CDOT for this when we had those lists approved. And clearly, any outreach would need to be coordinated between the city, county, town, and all governments down valley. So this would need to be a region-wide effort in terms of education. I think it's worth pointing out, too, though, that with the app-based verification system, that is a much larger lift in terms of public outreach, because we're not only educating people on the usage of the HOV lane, but we're also educating them on whatever this app-based system is. So going down that road, I think that we would need to hire out a public outreach firm in order to really make sure that that moves forward effectively. But in terms of the staff recommendation, I would note that it is considering that the roadside camera-based technology is not fully proven yet, that state law does currently prohibit citations for HOV noncompliance without a law enforcement officer present, that Highway 82 is not currently tolled, so we don't have that advantage at this time. We also recognize that there's numerous risks and a high initiation cost for the app-based verification system. And as well as that CDOT has not yet adopted any camera-based or app-based technologies. So anything that we would do down those roads does require approval, and there's no guarantee that we would obtain approval through CDOT to utilize any of those technologies. And that CDOT is starting to go down this experimental testing path, which I think is beneficial to us from the standpoint of we have the opportunity to sort of wait and see what comes of that process. But at this point, we are recommending for the time being utilizing local law enforcement while recognizing the drawbacks to utilizing law enforcement for those efforts. But we also recognize that law enforcement can be scaled up quickly with relatively minimal costs and risks in the future. So we can also scale it back. Say CDOT says, hey, we've got this roadside camera-based technology that we have adopted and we think we can use. We can then use that on Highway 82 and scale back our law enforcement appropriately. But in terms of the outcome from today's meeting, we're really looking for is that initial direction in terms of developing an HOV enforcement plan. So the 3 options that I see are really on the table is utilizing law enforcement, automating the verification, which we talked about quite a bit, and really doing nothing at this time. I would like to just note that that is on the table at this point, particularly, again, with CDOT going down the road of looking at these technologies, but recognizing that we don't know where that's going to land and we don't know how long that's going to take. So at this point, the staff recommendation is administrative direction for staff to develop a plan for HOV lane compliance with Colorado State Patrol and Pickens County Sheriff's Office, and bringing back to you what that financial request would look like as a part of your 2023 budget.
Okay, great. That's a lot of information. I appreciate that. Well, I have a lot of respect for the Aspen Institute and the work that John and Crystal have done, but I really feel like this is a solution that's looking for a problem. I'm just not convinced that we have a lot of traffic congestion between Basalt and the ABC. I would really favor the do-nothing approach at this point, but I'd be interested to know what my colleagues here have to say, and I know Ward's had his hand up,
Was first.
so go ahead.
Yeah, I've been in the valley long enough to remember echo, to remember when the HOV lane was first instituted. And the courts would not enforce it. So the sheriff's department was issuing tickets and the courts would not enforce it. So we need to see what the attitude of the court system is at this point. And I agree with Mayor Madsen that basalt to park and ride is not a congestion problem.
Patty?
Yeah, I have a couple points. First of all, for the license plate readers, we have an issue called snow, and sometimes you can't see the license plates, or mag chloride. And the other thing is the state is also not enforcing front license plates requirements. So most cars these days aren't even equipped to put a front license plate on. And it's difficult to read the rear license plate because people tailgate on the highway, and it would be hard to separate the cars out. So that would be an issue, but I'm not in favor of the privacy issues of, I think there's too many concerns with license plate reading at this time. I have an option 4, just to throw one at you, and maybe an option 5. It's called a week here and a week there. Just do enforcement, have the sheriff's office and Colorado State Patrol work out a schedule where 1 week, just so people know that we mean it when we say we have an HOV lane. And I'm sorry if you don't agree with the HOV lane. It is part of the record of decision, and we have a responsibility to enforce it. So maybe if we just let people know we're out there now, and when we have sheriff's availability or state trooper availability, we start looking into that. And, people get the word. If they, there's always a cop parked at the stop sign at Race Street and Gibson, people will start stopping at the stop sign. So that's another option we might be looking at. I think that maybe may settle better with CSP and the sheriff's office. The other thing is, and Steve loves this one, is the fake car that they have at Twin Lakes.
So effective. You know it's fake. You've known it's fake for 20 years, but you're like, but this could be the time.
It gets me because one time I went by there and it was a real one, just so you know.
They have 2 now.
Just so you know. Okay, so that I'm just throwing out there because Steve always likes that one. The other one is just a question. When you have the Highway 36 between Boulder and Denver managed, you have a picture. What is a gantry?
The gantry are simply the structures that go over top of the highway that hold the equipment in place.
Let's not get this.
Okay, so do they have signage on those when you drive by and say, this is your HOV lane, this is your toll lane, this is your...
They often have signage. Sometimes it varies. Sometimes they have signage and equipment. Sometimes it's just equipment. But a gantry is just that thing that goes over the highway that holds.
You know how well people take to putting things over our highway? Yeah, okay, but thank you, Dave. I would be supportive of, our sheriff's office is already taxed. I mean, our sheriff's officers are already working huge amounts of overtime. They are exhausted, and we're losing sheriff's officers, and I'm sure CSP is in that same position. As far as not being a big financial request, I think it would be. So, and unless we have those two parties really involved in this and really supportive, we're not going to get anywhere. So I think we continue to talk with them and see if a week here and a week there might work. Try it for the summer. They pretty much know when the busy times are and when they see violations, and just have them up the ante for, a couple work days and get the word out there again that we are starting to enforce and try and come to a working agreement rather than just doing this full on. And we've got to work with the law enforcement. And it's really their decision. I think the safety issues of officers getting hit on the highway or people being killed on the highway when people aren't paying attention, they run into the police car that runs into the car with the person they pulled over, and the congestion it creates on the highway. I think those are big issues. So I think we need to take that into consideration. So I'm kind of supporting really and do something, but really minimal, and that would be to work with the SO and the CSP and see if we can come up with a week here, week there plan.
Kelly?
Thanks. I guess 4 things I'm wondering about. I'm wondering if I'm just going to type these in the chat since we're having like a pretty significant echo coming back here.
If you turn the volume off while you're talking, Kelly, we can hear you without an echo.
Really? Because I'm hearing it through here. But okay. So I guess 4 things. If there are, the safety officers here, I'd love to hear from them. And then I wonder, would it be possible to sort of combine some of the camera technology with in law enforcement? Like, could they get real enough time data in order to identify cars on the road who they would have to then follow up with to enforce on? Is my second question. My third question is, if these apps start to come into better fruition, would they be able to come to integrate with the transit app, which I feel like is the way that people are using WeCycle and finding out bus trips, and so there would just be one kind of app that folks would use for these different sources. And then finally, I'm wondering, I know we've used, a messaging blast approach that I think pings cell towers. And is it possible to refine that to a narrow enough area where during HOV hours, cell towers who are moving within the HOV area could get pinged with a notification that of just the basic rules and that there is active enforcement? Those are my brainstorms. Thanks.
Rachel?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to keep my mic off when I'm not talking so we don't add to the echo problem. I do support moving forward with discussions with the sheriff and the state patrol. I like Patty's concept of kind of random rewards, random enforcement. I do think it keeps people on their toes. You see them one time in a certain area, you always go slow those next few times and follow the rules. So I think that could be really valuable. I think you'll run into issues with how much time or money it might take, but I want to talk about the bigger issue, and that is people's driving habits. When there is enforcement, there is an incentive to start using a carpool lane the way it's supposed to be. And there's a disincentive from cheating in the carpool lane and thinking that's just your free lane to use as long as you don't bother anybody. I mean, you just need to think back to the origin and destination studies. And, it may seem like it's free flowing traffic through Old Snowmass Canyon. That doesn't mean it doesn't add up to a massive traffic jam when it slows down and it's no longer 4 lanes and you're entering Aspen, or you're taking the 2-lane road up to Brush Creek. It's, you can't stop them at that point. You've got to catch them way earlier on to say, hey, carpooling's the way to go. And, if there could be, as this enforcement happens, even more emphasis on, reduced parking rates or free parking for carpools once they've gotten to their destination in the village. We do offer some carpool passes in Aspen, but it is all part of a system. And there's a point at which we can take, this 5% away and that 4% away and this 6% away, and soon you don't have a system. And you really don't have a reason for people to want to get on the bus rapid transit bus if their lane is all full of single occupant cars who are not not going to be following the rules. And the bus is now behind them at every traffic light. The bus is behind them trying to get into town. And it's you either are going with a program to control traffic or you're not. And even though these sort of changes are often painful, the thing I really want to say is I was actually physically there for the ribbon cutting on the Basalt to Buttermilk section of Highway 82. And the highway commissioner who was there for those ceremonies was really clear. He said, you guys in this upper valley have to make this work because no one's coming back to give you a 3-lane through the valley. No one's coming back to add more. And you need to manage your traffic and your congestion on this road. We're giving you the tools to do it. And it's up to you to make it work. And if you don't make it work, you'll deal with the congestion. But CDOT's not going to come back to add additional lanes from Basalt to Buttermilk or El Jebel. And when we talk about the traffic problems, especially we're focused as EOTC Upper Valley, but all of us have members in RAFTA, and we're members of RAFTA. RAFTA is dealing with the traffic jams in El Jebel, at the traffic light there in the population. Our other partners are dealing with the traffic jam in Glenwood Springs. And to just say, well, we don't really care about that HOV lane that we had them put in as part of the way to control traffic growth for the next 50 years, not just today. We need to start getting serious about using the tools we have. And but our choices up here affect Carbondale. How many people bother to carpool? How many people drive? How many people get on the bus? Our decisions affect Glenwood Springs. They affect every transit rider there. So I would say, yes, we need to start finding a way to effectively enforce or have people feel it will be enforced regularly enough to obey the rules on the HOV lane. Otherwise, we're just not even treading water. Thank you.
Skippy?
Yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate your comments, and I validate that, there isn't a significant amount of traffic between Brush Creek Park and Ride and Basalt, or really Buttermilk and Basalt. But I don't think it then follows that this is a solution looking for a problem. I was thinking, when Rachel was talking, it's kind of like I may be in a room by myself with no food and start feeling really sick and be like, well, there's no food around, but it's like I ate 12 hours ago and I ate something bad then, and so the problem actually emerged before it was visible. And I think part of why we don't see traffic in that area is because drivers are using more capacity than was intended. And that might feel good now, but the reality is we want people to feel the pain that they will feel anyways on their drive earlier, so they make those downstream decisions in the areas they're more likely near their home, where they're more likely to have a carpool. And so for those reasons, I do think this is worth pursuing. I think staff's recommendation is the right one. I don't think the app or the camera are viable at this point. But the big qualifier for me is I know how overtaxed our police are. Patty's already saying that. And so if this comes at the expense of other things that I view as far more important, life safety and otherwise, then the no option may be our only option.
Ward?
Yeah, I wonder if we could bifurcate this, that we have HOV lane enforcement from the Park and Ride into Aspen, but not from Park and Ride to Salt.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I defer to those who really know what they're talking about. But it seems to me the purpose of doing this is to reduce the total number of cars on 82. And while the traffic may flow pretty freely between Buttermilk and Basalt, although I don't think it does. If you see in the morning when the trade parade's coming up Valley, it's pretty intense. But the idea is to get fewer vehicles on the road by giving an incentive to people to have multiple people in a vehicle. And I get that. I'm not really in favor of all the electronic ways of detecting if you got multiple. Maybe in a couple years all that'll work, that's fine. But I would, to me, when I get into a HOV lane, I'm not supposed to be there. I'm afraid a cop's going to see me. That's my fear, right? And it's not only that the cop's on the side of the road once you go by, but the fear is the cop comes up alongside of you, right? He looks in and pulls you over. So I think that's the deterrent, and it's I stop at stop signs when there's nobody around because I'm afraid there might be a cop around, right? So it's also because that's the right thing to do. So I think if we could get, and I understand the shortage of police and all of that, but if we could get a program of police spot checking, doesn't have to be, it's sort of your idea when we want to go, but whatever it is, so people become aware that the HOV lane is a serious item, and there will be a penalty if you violate it, and try to educate people to do that. And I think having a cop, it's better if it's a live cop in the car, particularly if it's moving in the lane next to you.
I had to give Steve some credit there.
Maybe if we get, autonomous vehicle, you just have a dummy cop pulling up alongside. I'm just in favor of starting something using police officers until there's another way, a couple years in the future perhaps. But I think it's sort of silly that we created these HOV lanes and we don't enforce it, so absolutely nobody pays attention to it. So I guess to recap, I'm just in favor of an incremental, take it easy, go slow, go with a low-cost start, and let's see where it goes.
John?
Yeah, I think it's a tool in our toolbox that we need to look at. As Dave mentioned earlier, we are running out of ways to address the problem. And so I think every option needs to be looked at. And I think as far as, HOV compliance, I know I'm disappointed when I'm on Highway 82 and I see people using the HOV lane and there's only one person in that car. It also disappoints me that we have a no idling law in Aspen and there's no enforcement of that. So I'd like to see enforcement of that too, but that's a different jurisdiction for that. Anyway, and as far as the automated verification, obviously it's not ready yet, so I think that should still be something that we need to keep our eye on, but at this point, just going forward with the conversations with law enforcement.
Kelly?
She might be on mute there.
Kelly, you're on mute. Kelly, you're still on mute.
She turned her camera off, so she might have.
Oh. She's probably got her kids, so she
Let's
muted because the
just-
kids were in the
I'll
room.
lower her hand. Maybe it was just up.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
From Aspen to Buttermilk is just the bus-only lane. So the HOV lane starts at Buttermilk, or it starts kind of by the road going into Burlingame, I believe, is where the NASCAR race starts right there because people zoom into the right lane and they speed up immensely going down by the airport. I defy any of you to go down Highway 82 during the HOV hours, during the rush hour, and drive the speed limit in the left lane. You're obeying the HOV lane if you only have one person in the car. And if you're going 55, you are risking your life driving 55 in the HOV lane, because there's not one car that's not going at least 65 down there, and they're weaving in and out to get around the ones driving, they're in the HOV lane properly because they only have one person in there. And if they are obeying the speed limit, they're risking their lives doing that. I would rather, instead of HOV lane enforcement, I would rather have speed limit enforcement on that whole stretch of Highway 82 first. Do that as a first step. And I don't have the solution. I think getting more people to have more passengers in the car is maybe tied to the parking fee structure in Aspen than what lane you can drive on the highway. And I think that might be more enforceable, actually, than trying to enforce the HOV lane. And I'd like to really have us look at that, the parking fee structure and the HOV, the HOV permits for parking and that sort of thing. I think would be more effective, actually, getting more people into fewer cars.
You know, I just have to respond to that, Steve. The thing is that there is over 1,100 private parking spaces in Aspen, and there are hundreds of other destinations surrounding Aspen in the unincorporated county that people travel to work. It's not all controlled by parking. We are already at, was it $6 or $8 an hour during peak time? And it's $5 an hour right now during the off season. So, you know, those are some pretty high costs already. We're getting higher, but there's a point at which people now say, I come out of Snowmass, I turn left and go to Basalt to eat lunch because I don't want to pay to park. And so, you know, no, it can't all be on Aspen parking to try to control it. And I'm really not even sure about to what extent Snowmass charges to park in the rodeo lot or not. But that's only one tool, and we need multiple tools.
So, Mike,
I would also like to comment on that. Aspen has incorporated that as part of their parking or the traffic mitigation. They have raised the price of parking during peak hours, and that was part of the Aspen Institute recommendations.
Patty?
I just want to bring it back to, as a reminder, it's part of the record of decision. Whether we agree with that or not, it's part of it. Therefore, it needs in some way to be enforced. Steve's right about safety issues for people who are obeying the law, who aren't in the HOV lane, who are driving the speed limit in the fast lane. And I mean, I've driven down there to go down Valley, and it's crazy. The highway's crazy. So then again, a double benefit, a return on investment, as Dave would say, is if we do a random week here, week there, we'll also have officers out there, and speeding can also be enforced at the same time.
Yeah, I fully agree with Patty, and I fully agree that speeding is a problem and there should be greater enforcement there. But, you know, I can't walk away from the record of decision. It's one of the few tools we have left.
Okay.
Bill?
Steve?
There's one other consideration that people haven't mentioned, but you know, there's a worker shortage in Aspen, and I think part of that is people are giving up driving to Aspen. Some people, they find a job down Valley, and even if it pays less, they're like, all right, this is the life I want to live. I don't want to live commuting to Aspen to go to a higher paying job. And I think a lot of people have given up, truthfully given up on coming to Aspen.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, but I know there are some. I've talked to people who, like, they find a job down there and they're so happy because it improves their lifestyle so immensely. So I think we need to be aware of that. You know, if we have more and more rules and restrictions and regulations on who, you know, what lane you can drive on in the highway to get there, there's going to be more people make that transition, and the worker shortage in Aspen maybe is a permanent thing that we have now. And I'd say Aspen, it's probably the same thing in Snowmass Village, but it's a problem, something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. I guess one of my fears is by having HOV enforcement, we're actually going to be creating more traffic. Now there's free-flowing traffic, and now we're going to tell people to drive in a certain lane. If they can't change lanes, then are we actually creating more traffic?
You can have a high occupancy vehicle and not be in the HOV lane.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to drive in the other lane. Mm-hmm. It's just if you're not high occupancy, you can't drive in the HOV lane.
Right, exactly. So we're going to have people piling up in one lane.
They're going to be picking whoever's going fastest.
Or maybe taking the bus or carpooling.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's their incentive to do something other than single occupancy.
I'm all in favor of carpooling. I think it's a great option. Mm-hmm. I'm just not sure that this is the carrot to get people to do it. I think right now the carrot is to pick up their HOV parking permit, you know, at the Brush Creek Intercept lot. I think that's a much higher incentive than allowing them to drive in a lane right now that's really, in my opinion, not that congested. Okay. Any other comments?
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Do we have any law enforcement on the line?
I was just looking at that. We had Jared Rapp earlier. It looks like we might have lost him, unfortunately.
Okay.
I don't see
So-
Alex.
Okay, so, we have to have a public hearing. Sorry, I won't make a motion.
Right. Do we have any public comment?
I'm not seeing anybody out there.
Okay.
Just have a few comments before you guys get to making motion.
Go ahead.
Just to try to respond to some of the items that came up earlier. In terms of the speeding and other law enforcement issues, I don't intend this to be a situation where we say CSP or Pickens County Sheriffs, you can only do a high occupancy vehicle. Certainly if someone goes flying by or if they're driving recklessly, I don't think that it's in anyone's best interest to tell them that they can't do that. So I think we would still have the trooper or sheriffs out there, and they would still be able to do that enforcement. In regards to the parking pricing and the HOV carpool passes, both of those are highly successful. And something that we found through the Fair and Peers study is they said that sure, it could be more successful. There's always things you could do, but something they kept saying was you already have a very successful program there. And the piece that wasn't being implemented was the HOV lane enforcement. So that was the one piece that kept showing up as saying, hey, you're doing these other things great, but this one is just hasn't really been moved forward recently. And in terms of the courts and whether they would enforce or uphold a citation for HOV violation, the feedback I've gotten has been that we don't know where the courts would land anymore, really because there haven't been any citations. So it's something that would need to be tested before we would know. And right now, we just don't know where the courts would land, to be honest with you. Let's see. In terms of integration, so Kelly brought up integration with the transit app. I did talk to the conversations I had with Go Karma and Ride Flag. I asked them about integration and whether we could merge this into some sort of ride-sharing app or something like that. They said that they're working on it, but they're not quite there yet. They have some pilot mergers with other jurisdictions, but it's not part of their standard platform. So we might be able to get there, but we're not there yet, basically, in terms of what they have off the shelf. And then in terms of combining camera enforcement or utilizing the camera technology with live law enforcement, I did pose that question to Envision.ai, who is appears to be one of the leaders in the roadside cameras, and they said that they have not done that at this point. So their cameras have been out for a few years now, and they haven't put them in a situation where they're trying to alert law enforcement real time. So say you've got a camera a half mile up the road and a sheriff sitting farther up the road, giving them some sort of heads up that, hey, this vehicle with X license plate is in the HOV lane and we're showing that they don't have the correct number of occupants. They said that they might be willing to try it, but they haven't tested it yet. So it would be a pilot basis if we did want to go down that route. I think that's all of the questions that I had to respond to.
Okay, good information. Let's entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to direct staff to develop a plan for HOV lane in compliance with CSP and Pickens County Sheriff's Office, and if necessary, include a financial request for EoTC budget review. But I want to add to that staff recommendation to work with the law enforcement as far as I don't want to say random, I'm not sure what a good word is, a week here, week there enforcement, just to start public awareness and public education as part of that.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Light touch, high effect strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, Kelly just did a text on there.
Yeah, there's a text in the chat for a question.
I can't read that.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Kelly. I'd missed that one. So she asked, she says, I also wondered about a narrow text blast to cell phones in the HOV area about active enforcement obligations, et cetera. And honestly, I don't have a good answer for you there. I think that I don't know too much about cell phones and whether we'd be able to pin down who is actually traveling at that time and being able to get that message out. So that's something I would need to look into.
Dave, we did the big cell phone study on transit, and I wonder if that might be a good initial touch point, just to ask them if they may know.
Or the emergency alert.
I think emergency alert is really the main direction. The one you're referring to, that's really looking at a post
transit data,
post
yeah.
case. So I'm not too sure.
That would be part of the education process, I think, too.
And I would just want to add, I like the approach we're going on because it ties back to the courts may throw all this out, so we should start incrementally, test it, see how it goes, and see what the courts say before we spend real money.
And if you need any help working with the SO or CSP, let us know, please.
I will. They've been very, very helpful and cooperative.
But if you want an elected to accompany you, I'm sure we could find you one. Or 15.
All right, anybody else? Greg?
Yeah, the chair. Yes, thank you. It's been brought up and then laughed off. Twin Lakes uses it to great effect. Yeah. Why can't we try that as part of our outreach to our local sheriff or CSP to have parked patrol cars in certain locations? The tourists will fall for it every time because it's new to them. Occasional users will fall for it occasionally, and regular users may be wise to it, but they'll pause. I think that this is probably the most cost-effective thing that we can do, and it's been demonstrated to work over 25, 30 years in a community that can't afford to do anything else. So I would like to include in these conversations a discussion of, putting the dummy cars out there. I think that we're always looking for the most expensive way to do things at times, and this could be an inexpensive way to gain some effect. Even if it's a 5% change in traffic habits, that actually is measurable and noticeable. So thank you.
Point of order. There's a motion on the floor in a second.
Yeah, and since I made the motion,
I'm sorry, we're in the comment portion of this, and I don't think CDOT would allow us to leave a permanently side vehicle in the shoulder for someone to smash into on a highway that's a 55-mile speed limit, if not frequently traveled at 70. Twin Lakes is an entirely different situation. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour there, and it's not even really on the shoulder. I go by it all the time. So I appreciate the desire for simplicity, but that is a seasonal road. It is not open year-round. It's certainly not open in the winter. And a lot of us remember the accidents that were had on Highway 82 with people trying to change a tire in the side lane and getting rear-ended from behind. We could have the conversation and ask them if they think that's something they would like along a 55-mile-an-hour state highway. But we've had hard times just getting them to allow us to put up the pedestrian crossing things on Main Street at 25 miles an hour because it impedes the road and it's a hazard. So I don't want us to start getting unrealistic or fantastical about what's really going to make a difference here, as painful as actual enforcement is.
Okay, since I made the motion.
Can I just respond to that? I just need to respond to that. Rachel, I really appreciate your opinions as you share them, but I really would love to have a consult with the CSP or the sheriff before we shoot the legs out of a suggestion. So I'm just going to say, I'll say it again. I think that should be part of the conversation, and I think we could probably find locations where it's not going to cause a tragic wreck. So that my request still stands. I would ask if we could amend the motion and go from there.
Well, what I've been trying to say, being the one who made the motion, I don't think we necessarily need to amend the motion. I think it's just part of the conversation that we've already directed staff to have with the sheriff's office and CSP. But if you would like me to formally amend the motion to include a discussion about a staged law enforcement vehicle along Highway 82, I will ask the person who seconded my motion. Did you second my motion?
That was me.
Oh, Skippy.
And I would happily accept that amendment. I think we
Okay,
could
thank
all be
you.
well served by looking for cheaper, easier solutions. And if they're not there, then we look.
It just leaves the conversation
Then we
open.
looked.
Okay.
All right,
There
thank
is
you,
a-
Rachel and Greg. Appreciate
I think
it.
there is a sheriff most of the time, at least when I drive by, at the landfill already.
Yeah, there's some key spots. You
Yeah, there
always
are.
know where they are.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second.
Could you restate the entire motion with the amendment?
The motion was to provide direction to staff to develop a plan for HOV lane compliance with CSP and the Pickens County Sheriff's Office, and include a financial request if deemed necessary, to be reviewed with the EoTC budget. This would include a discussion as far as a here or there enforcement. And we will add to that a discussion about a staged vehicle parked along the highway. You have a question on your face, Steve, I can see it. And,
Okay. Pickens County, do you want to?
yeah, I'm going to call the question. Kelly McNicholas Curry,
Yes.
Greg Poshman,
Yes.
Steve Child,
No.
Patty Clapper, yes.
John, do you want to do it for Aspen?
Sure. I'm going to vote yes. Ward?
Yes.
Rachel?
No.
Skippy?
Yes.
Okay, and Snowmass Village, Alyssa?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Bill Madsen, no.
I think that the motion doesn't carry if all jurisdictions don't approve it, and it was a tie vote in Aspen.
It was a tie vote. It was 3-1.
I got
Okay.
2-1 in Aspen.
3-1.
So I've got,
Oh, sorry.
It
My bad.
wasn't a majority in Snowmass would be unless
2-1
that counts as your
Right.
quorum.
so I've got that Snowmass did not pass. So the motion itself does not pass if one of the jurisdictions does
Snowmass
not.
had Alyssa and Bill voting, Alyssa and Tom voting yes, and Bill voting no.
Oh, sorry.
It's a majority vote.
It passed
Yeah,
in
sorry.
everyone, it just didn't pass unanimous, and they don't have to pass unanimous.
Sorry, no, I just.
4-1, 3-1, 2-1.
I'm on it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, thanks for the information. Next item on the agenda is information only for updates, Q&A.
This is just some time to take any questions that you might have on
Unknown
update items.
participant is now exiting.
The only other update I have, again, is on the food truck. So the food truck itself was placed at the site yesterday. So
Oh.
if you go by the park and ride, you'll see the food truck out there. I understand that they are finishing up some paperwork with the state, and they're hoping to open next week.
Great.
Awesome.
Greg, you can eat now.
What's the name of the operator?
It's Taqueria El Yaqui.
Oh, yeah, key. Cool.
And I'll be meeting with Pickens County Communications tomorrow to start reviewing options in terms of getting the word out once they open.
Yeah, I saw it down there yesterday, and it does take up quite a bit of parking now.
It does. So what we marked off was the full amount that was permitted. I don't know that we're going to need to keep all of that blocked off. So we'll have to review that, but we might be able to reclaim a few spaces there.
Okay. And can you just give us an update on the back lot that's now filled with the recycled pavement? It's been closed for quite a while. Is that going to be opening up again?
It will be opening up. We're waiting on one more riser to be replaced out there. So we thought that they were all round. One of them turned out to be square, and they ordered the wrong one, and it's on back order, so we're waiting for that last riser. But I think that we should be able to start getting it open here pretty soon. I need to touch base with Blake Fitch over at the City of Aspen about that.
I'm sorry, what's a riser?
So for the, after we put in the additional recycled asphalt, the drains needed to be raised up because they were sunken in once we added the additional recycled asphalt. So it's just rising those up.
Gotcha.
It's like the ring they put in a manhole cover when it's too low.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
okay. Anybody else? Questions? Updates?
Let's see, I
The
do have a
pass is
question
open.
On the, what was the gravel part of the Brush Creek Park and Ride? It's all black now. Are they putting some kind of tar base on there or something to cut the dust, or what's happening there?
So that is, that's the recycled asphalt. So that's actually, you can go drive on the roundabout and the landing, or the, why am I drawing blank? the landing
airport,
strips,
yeah.
the airport, and Brush Creek Road is all out there. And
So they're just spreading it out to have it like dust control or
Brian just
mud
left.
control or whatever?
It's
Yeah.
actually the surface.
They
yeah.
took the recycled asphalt from the airport project.
That will be the surface when we to paint
This is a,
on for parking and whatnot?
This is a temporary fix right now, is the plan. So the plan right now, we'll be meeting with Federal Highways out there first week of June, I believe, to review how we can use the material as a part of the reconstruction. So we're still discussing that, but we felt as though we had the access to this recycled material, and we needed to put something out down there. It was turning into basically just mud. So we saw an opportunity to do at least a temporary fix and then utilize that material as a part of the reconstruction.
And it keeps the landfill too.
Well, that explains
Right, it
it.
was
Yeah.
great.
I saw that today and I'm like, whoa, what's going on?
They even have to pay for the black paint.
So I don't think that we're going to be striping it, the back part at least. Once it gets fully redone, it'll have landscape islands and be striped and everything.
I think was there a question or comment up on the Zoom?
Any other questions, comments?
But I think Rachel was going to make a motion.
Okay.
No.
Any
I
update
was
on the
going to make a motion
near-term
to
transit
adjourn the
improvement
meeting,
program?
perhaps, but not on a new topic.
That's what I mean. I was going to let you make that one since I made the other two. I'm leaving it to somebody else.
Well, thank you, Patty. I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Dave, did you have an update on the near-term transit improvement program?
In addition to what's in your packet for the other projects moving forward with the near-term transit improvement program, in terms of the Buttermilk crossing and transit signal bypass lanes and the trail connection between Buttermilk, Elk Creek Road and Truscott, and connecting those transit stops, we do have SGM under contract. We're going to be having a kickoff meeting here shortly, so the public process for both of those will be combined initially since they're functionally similar to each other. The processes will likely diverge as they move along, but initially they'll be combined, and you can expect that public process starting here this summer.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And before we adjourn, I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
I want to thank Dave. He does an amazing job. He works really hard.
Yes, he does.
Nice
I want
work,
you to know,
Dave.
he
Thank you,
spends
Dave.
a lot of time on preparation and research and putting things together, and it's not always easy, and he's been doing a great job.
It presents it in a very articulate, understandable manner. Yeah.
Here, here.
Thank you all.
Thanks, David.
Agreed.
All right, Rachel's made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to call it by jurisdiction? I think we're good. Thanks. Good job.
Good night, everybody.
Oh,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thanks for ending that on an upbeat note, Patty.
Yeah.